Have you ever heard him say, "I'm fine," while every part of you could feel that he wasn't? He smiled. He changed the subject. He said, "It's nothing." But deep down you felt something was off. Something unspoken. Like a door was shut right before you could enter. And the worst part? You blamed yourself for it. The truth is, men don't always speak with words. Sometimes, what they feel most deeply is buried under silence. Or worse, hidden behind the wrong words. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists, and what you don't say controls you." When he says, "I'm okay," when clearly he's not, that is not lying. That is surviving. That is him holding a fragile world inside himself that he was never taught how to share. Because long before you, there was a moment. A moment when showing emotions meant weakness, when pain was punished, and silence was praised. And that boy, the one who learned to lock it all away, never really disappeared. He just grew taller. Now he's in front of you, quiet, distant, smiling in a way that feels rehearsed. You ask if he's all right. He says yes, but his voice drops half a tone. His eyes shift. He looks at the floor. What you're hearing is not the truth. What you're witnessing is his protection. He's not avoiding you. He's avoiding the part of himself he doesn't know how to face. You see, most people think love is found in words, in "I love yous," in romantic gestures. But love, real love, often hides in the space between words, in the tension, in the pause, in the things left unsaid. And what if I told you that his silence could be his loudest confession? What if every "I'm fine" was a cry for understanding? Not the kind where you ask again and again until he answers, but the kind where you pause and simply feel what he can't express. Because the truth is, if he's saying this, and it feels empty, it's not because he doesn't care. It's because he's never learned how to hold that care without being afraid of losing control. But there's more to this story. There's something he won't tell you. Something Jung called the shadow, the hidden part of ourselves we fear the most. And sometimes, what he hides from you is not about you at all. It's about him. If you stay with me, I'll show you how to hear what he's truly saying even when he's silent. Because once you understand this, you'll never hear the words, "I'm fine," the same way again. And maybe then, you'll realize he was never distant. He was just afraid of being seen. He says he's not upset, but he can't look you in the eye. He says everything's good, but the air feels heavier, doesn't it? Words are supposed to clarify, but sometimes they only conceal. And if you've ever felt confused by what a man says versus what you feel from him, you're not imagining it. Because some men speak in shadows. Let's look closer. The first sign is subtle but powerful. He remembers the smallest things you said weeks ago, yet he avoids talking about the future. You'll mention a random story, and days later he brings it up, smiling, like it mattered to him more than he let on. But then, when you ask where things are going, when you open the door towards something deeper, he steps back. Why? Because that memory he remembered, that wasn't just information, it was emotion. And for a man who's disconnected from his emotional vocabulary, the only safe way to show he cares is to reference the past, not lean into the future. The second sign is the shift in tone when he talks to you. Not the words, but how he says them. His voice softens around you, sometimes almost a whisper. He might tease, he might deflect with humor. But if you listen, really listen, you'll hear a part of him trying to connect without admitting how much he needs it. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive the world. For men, that mask often includes stoicism, strength, and control. And feelings? They don't fit well under that mask. So instead, the voice carries them. A drop in volume, a hesitation, a breath before he responds. Those are not just mannerisms. They're emotional fingerprints. The third sign is this. He prolongs simple conversations that should have ended. Not because he has more to say, but because being near you feels safer than he knows how to admit. He'll ask one more question, laugh a little longer, pretend to check his phone while lingering in the doorway. He's not stalling. He's soaking it in. But here's what you must understand. These hidden signs don't mean he's lying. They mean he's protecting himself. his wounds, his truth. You see, most men are not taught emotional fluency. They're taught emotional avoidance. From a young age, boys hear messages like, "Don't cry," "Man up," "Be strong." So what do? They become fluent in denial. And then one day, they meet someone like you. Someone who sees them, feels them, and gently asks, "How are you really?" And suddenly, the ground beneath them shifts. He's not sure if it's safe, not because of you, but because safety, to him, has never included vulnerability. So instead of showing his feelings, he hides them behind behavior. He might get quiet when you're emotional, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know what to do with emotions, his or yours. He might make a joke when you open up, not because he's dismissing you, but because humor is the only tool he was ever given to handle discomfort. And he might even push you away when you get too close, not because he wants distance, but because closeness terrifies him. Carl Jung believed that what we suppress doesn't vanish. It hides in what he called the shadow, a hidden self that governs our behaviors in ways we can't always see. So when he says, "I'm just tired," what he might mean is, "I'm overwhelmed and I don't know how to say it without falling apart." When he says, "I'm busy," what he might be feeling is, "I don't know how to let someone in and not lose myself." When he says, "It's nothing," what he's truly communicating is, "It's everything, but I don't have the words." And here's the hardest truth. He doesn't even know he's doing this. To him, these words are real, because the alternative is standing naked in the chaos of his emotions, and that's a place he's never felt safe. But you feel the gap. You feel the moment when his words and his energy don't align. You feel the love in his presence, but the absence in his expression. And it hurts, because it's confusing, because you want clarity, you want truth. So what do? You stop chasing the words, and you start listening to the silence. Pay attention to the pauses, the timing, the way he looks at you when you're not looking, the way his hands fidget when he opens up, the way he inhales right before saying something that seems rehearsed. These are his tells. These are the cracks in the mask. And the man behind the mask? He's not emotionless. He's not cold. He's not manipulative. He's afraid. Afraid that if you see all of him, you'll leave. Or worse, you'll stay and see something unlovable. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming real, becoming whole, requires facing the shadow. And that's a journey not every man is ready for. Yet, but when he starts showing these signs, when the words don't match the energy, it means something inside him is already waking up. Something unconscious is pushing through. And maybe, just maybe, you are not here to fix him. You are here to witness him, to see what he can't see yet. And in doing so, maybe you'll remember, his words are only half the story. The rest is waiting in the silence he doesn't know how to escape from. What if his words are not meant to communicate, but to protect? What if the way he speaks is not a reflection of how he feels, but a defense mechanism rooted in something much deeper? You see, when Carl Jung spoke about the unconscious, he wasn't talking about mystery. He was talking about truth. A truth so raw, so buried, that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. The unconscious is not darkness. It is unprocessed light. It holds every memory he never resolved, every wound he never named, every belief about love, safety, and self-worth that was formed before he even knew what those words meant. And when he speaks to you, when he says things that feel off or confusing, those words often carry fingerprints from that hidden place. Let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed that some men speak in patterns? They use the same phrases in different situations, like, "I don't want to hurt you," or "You deserve better," or "I'm not good at relationships." At first, it sounds like honesty, but what if it's actually programming? Carl Jung believed that we repeat emotional loops until we become conscious of them. That means, if he was abandoned, he may now fear abandonment so deeply that he avoids closeness altogether. If he once failed to protect someone he loved, he may now sabotage intimacy to avoid feeling helpless again. So those words? They are not answers. They are echoes. Echoes of emotional truths he hasn't yet faced. And until he does, they will keep showing up in his relationships, in his tone, in his silence. Jung called this projection, the idea that what we cannot accept in ourselves, we unconsciously place onto others. So, when he says, "You're overthinking," he might actually be the one overwhelmed by thoughts he cannot manage. When he says, "You always want too much," he may be the one feeling emotionally incapable and trying to deflect that inadequacy. He is not lying to hurt you. He is speaking from a mind that doesn't yet understand itself. That is the tragedy of the unconscious. It acts without consent. It speaks without clarity. It uses language not to connect, but to survive. And that's why his words feel distant. Because deep down, they are not meant for you. They are meant to silence the voice inside him that says, "You're not enough. You're too broken." Or, "You'll lose her once she sees the real you." This is not an excuse. It is a framework, a lens. So you can stop taking it personally. So you can stop twisting yourself in circles trying to decode his every sentence. Because sometimes, when he says, "I'm confused," it means his unconscious mind is battling between what he feels and what he's been taught is safe. Sometimes, when he says, "This is too much," it means you are touching a part of him that's been frozen since childhood. And sometimes, when he says nothing at all, that's when his soul is screaming the loudest. Jung believed that until we bring the unconscious to light, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. That means many men are living out old stories, speaking with voices that are not theirs, repeating beliefs that were never true, only familiar. So the question becomes, can you hear what he's really saying beneath the mask? Can you pause long enough to realize that his coldness might actually be fear? That his distance might be a memory? That his emotional shutdown is not rejection, but a system overload? Because when you begin to see his unconscious at work, you no longer need to chase closure. You begin to feel compassion. And here's the twist. The more you understand this about him, the more you understand it about yourself. Because we all speak from our shadows. We all hide behind words at times. And love, real, lasting love, begins the moment we choose to stop reacting to the surface and start listening to the soul underneath. That's where the truth is. That's where connection lives. In the space between the words. In the unconscious truth waiting to be seen. In every man, there is a woman he cannot name. She is not someone he's met. She is not someone he can see. She lives inside him, a whisper, a memory, a mirror. Carl Jung called her the Anima. The Anima is the feminine side of a man's unconscious. She is emotion, intuition, vulnerability, chaos, tenderness. And when a man is disconnected from her, he becomes split, logical but numb, capable but emotionally lost. You may not realize it, but when he meets you, a woman who is present, emotionally attuned, alive, something stirs inside him. It is not just attraction. It is recognition. Your presence triggers the part of him that has been buried, denied, suppressed. Not because he does not want it, but because he never learned how to hold it. He begins to feel emotions he cannot name, longings he cannot explain, a hunger for something he thought he had to live without. But here's the catch. The moment he gets close to it, he pulls away. Not because he is bored, not because he wants someone else, but because loving you means facing the part of himself he has spent his whole life running from. Jung taught that the more a man resists the anima, the more likely she is to erupt in unconscious ways, mood swings, confusion, projection, emotional withdrawal. She becomes the ghost in his relationships. The reason he sabotages what he cares about. The reason he says things like, "I don't know why I'm like this," or "I just can't do love right now." He's not trying to hurt you. He's wrestling with an inner force that terrifies him. Now add to that the shadow. The shadow is everything. He has repressed anger, grief, fear, insecurity. It is the emotional basement of the soul. And when love enters the room, the shadow doesn't disappear. It gets louder, Because love isn't safe for someone who hasn't made peace with themselves. So what does this look like? He adores you one day and disappears the next. He opens up in a rare, beautiful moment, then goes cold without warning. He gets close, then says something cruel, then apologizes, then repeats it all over again. To you, it feels like confusion. To him, it feels like chaos. That chaos is the war between his conscious self, the part that wants connection, and his unconscious self, the part that fears it. You are not causing the war. You are just the first person who made him aware of it. When a man falls in love with a woman who embodies his anima, she becomes a portal, not to romance, to healing. But healing does not begin in comfort. It begins in confrontation. Confrontation with the mother wound he never acknowledged, with the grief he swallowed as a boy, with the guilt he carries for never being enough. And because all of this is unconscious, he cannot explain why being close to you makes him feel so unsteady. He just knows that something is rising, and it scares him. So what do most men do? They run, they numb, they pretend not to care. Because facing the anima means breaking open. It means unlearning decades of emotional suppression. It means looking into the eyes of someone who sees him and not flinching. And that is rare. That is sacred. Jung believed that wholeness begins when we stop rejecting our inner opposites. When a man integrates his anima and befriends his shadow, he no longer fears love. He begins to embody it. He no longer needs to control. He no longer hides. He no longer speaks from fear. He meets you not as a mask, but as a mirror. And in that moment, love becomes real. Not perfect, but real. Because now he is not just speaking to you. He is speaking from his soul. And that changes everything. She met him when she was finally starting to feel whole. After years of heartbreak, growth, and therapy, she had built something solid inside herself. But then came his smile, the way he listened, the way he looked at her like she was the answer to a question he never knew how to ask. At first, it felt magical. He called her healing. He said she made him feel safe. He told her, "You're the only one who really sees me." And for a while, she believed she had found something rare. But what she didn't realize was that she had become a mirror. Not just any mirror. A mirror for the parts of him he refused to face. Every time she supported him, he leaned in. Every time she set a boundary, he pulled away. Every time she asked for emotional responsibility, he said, "I'm trying," but never really changed. She thought she was loving him, but in truth, she was holding space for his shadow. Carl Jung described projection as the act of placing what we cannot accept in ourselves onto someone else. And that's exactly what was happening. He projected his need to be saved, his longing to be mothered, his pain, guilt, and emotional shame. And she, unaware, accepted the role. She became his savior, his therapist, his emotional home. But here's the thing. Love cannot survive when one person becomes the emotional container for another. Eventually, she began to lose herself. She found herself walking on eggshells, suppressing her needs, waiting for the version of him she saw in his potential to finally emerge. But potential is not a person, and projection is not love. The relationship ended the day she finally realized she wasn't being loved for who she was. She was being used as a bandage for a wound she didn't cause. He didn't mean to hurt her. He wasn't malicious. He simply hadn't done the inner work. Jung would say his unconscious had chosen her, not his heart. She was his anima, the inner feminine he had yet to integrate, and rather than embracing her with awareness, he chased her in confusion. This is why projection in love can feel intoxicating at first. It mirrors back the ideal. But the moment reality enters, the fantasy collapses. And unless both people are awake to what is truly happening, the relationship will become a loop. One giving too much, the other taking too little responsibility, both mistaking emotional intensity for emotional intimacy. She walked away not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally started loving herself enough to stop being his shadow. And that was the beginning of her true healing. He always said he hated drama. He said he liked peace. He didn't like conflict. He didn't want to get too deep. But the truth was, he didn't hate drama. He feared vulnerability. She noticed it in small ways. How he would change the subject when emotions got real. How he would get quiet, not out of calm, but out of retreat. And how, in moments where love required presence, he would suddenly disappear. He didn't walk out. He stayed. But emotionally, he would shut the door. At first, she thought he was emotionally unavailable, that he didn't care enough, that he wasn't trying. But then came the day he cried in his sleep. She heard it. A broken, quiet sound coming from the other side of the bed. His body tensed, his breath uneven. And when he woke up, he laughed it off. "I was just dreaming," he said. But in that moment, she saw something. A glimpse of the boy he used to be. A boy who never learned how to cry in front of anyone. A boy who maybe wasn't held enough. Who maybe was told to be strong before he knew what strength even meant. Carl Jung believed that inside every adult is a child who was either seen or left behind. And when that inner child is neglected, it doesn't vanish. It hides. It controls. So when this man says, "I'm fine," he's not lying. He's protecting the boy inside who was never allowed not to be. He's the man who smiles during arguments, who cracks a joke during silence, who flirts when he's scared, who pulls away right when you're about to get close, not because he doesn't want closeness, but because closeness threatens the armor he's worn since he was a child. He may not even know that he's afraid. He just knows that every time you get too close, something inside him tightens. And that something is the forgotten child. The one who learned that feelings make you weak, that asking for love is needy, that needing anything at all makes you a burden. So he learned how to perform strength. He learned how to stay calm, how to never complain, how to smile while breaking. But love, real love, doesn't fall for performances. It sees through them. And that is what terrifies him. Because to be seen means to be felt. To be felt means to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable means to be back in that childhood room, asking for something and not getting it. So he stays distant, or silent, or surface level, not because he is heartless, but because somewhere along the way, he learned that being himself meant being alone. And the tragedy is, the woman next to him isn't asking him to be fixed. She's just asking him to be real. But until he faces that forgotten child, the one who still waits for love in silence, he will never know how to give what he never received. And she will never know if he truly loved her, or if he was just trying not to lose her the way he once lost himself. There is something he will never say out loud, not because he is hiding it from you, but because he is hiding it from himself. Carl Jung called it the emotional shadow, the part of us that holds everything we refuse to face. Fear, shame, grief, longing, love. It is not evil. It is not wrong, but it is heavy. And so, we bury it. For many men, this shadow is filled with truths they were never allowed to name. Truths like, "I'm scared of losing you," or "I don't think I'm enough for you," or "If you really knew me, you'd leave." But instead of saying these things, he tells you he's tired. He tells you he needs space. He tells you, "It's not you, it's me." And technically, he's right. Because it is him. It is the part of him that learned early on that emotions are dangerous, that needing someone is weak, that pain should be swallowed, not spoken. So when he feels too much, he doesn't lean in. He shuts down. You think he's being distant. You think he stopped caring. But what's really happening is that he's overwhelmed by what he feels and has no idea how to hold it. The closer you get, the more his shadow rises. The more kindness you show, the more suspicious he becomes. The more love you offer, the more afraid he is of losing it. Because the emotional shadow is built on a foundation of loss. And to love you fully would mean confronting every past moment where love was used against him. So he protects himself. He keeps one foot in and one foot out. He loves you, but not too loudly. He shows up, but not completely. He says the right words, but something in his energy doesn't match. And you can feel it You feel the gap between what he says and what he feels. You sense the fear behind his silence. You hear the tension in his laughter. But you keep hoping because you believe in his potential. Because you've seen glimpses of the man he could be, if only he'd let himself heal. But here is the truth. He cannot love you in the way you deserve until he makes peace with his own shadow. He cannot show up fully until he sees that what he fears in you is what he's abandoned in himself. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that is what many relationships become: unconscious fate. A repeating cycle of closeness and fear, desire and retreat, love and withdrawal. Not because there's no love, but because love exposes what the shadow wants to hide. So the next time he pulls away, ask yourself not, "What did I do wrong?" but "What is he not ready to face?" Because sometimes the most terrifying thing for a man is not rejection. It is being truly seen. And sometimes when he says, "I'm fine," what he's really saying is, "I don't know how to be loved without losing the part of me I've kept hidden all this time." Sometimes the most powerful love story is the one that never got to be spoken. Not because it wasn't real, but because it lived in the spaces between words, in the glances, in the pauses, in the quiet ache that followed each goodbye. You see, the truth is, many men don't fall out of love. They fall into fear. Fear of being exposed. Fear of not being enough. Fear of repeating what broke them long before they met you. And that fear wears 1,000 disguises. It can look like silence. It can sound like, "I'm fine." It can feel like distance. But underneath it all, there is often a man who feels deeply and simply doesn't know how to stay open without falling apart. Carl Jung believed that healing begins the moment we choose to look inward, not for answers, but for presence. Because what we seek in others is often what we have forgotten in ourselves. So maybe this video didn't give you a checklist. Maybe it didn't offer solutions you can act on today. But maybe it gave you something more valuable. A mirror. A way to see what's really happening beneath the surface. A way to feel less alone in your confusion. A way to stop blaming yourself for the love you didn't receive. And maybe, just maybe, it helped you remember something important. That his silence was never your fault. That your sensitivity is not a weakness. That your longing for depth is not too much. It is just that not everyone is ready to meet you there. So here is my invitation. If this message found you at the right time, if it echoed something you've always felt but never knew how to name, leave a comment below and tell me what part of this story spoke to you. You never know who else might be reading it and feeling the same. And if you want more content like this, if you want to go deeper into the unseen parts of love, identity, and healing, feel free to follow this channel. Not for me, but for the part of you that is tired of surface-level noise and is ready for something real. Because the more we talk about what stays hidden, the more we create space for healing together. So until the next story, remember this. Sometimes the thing that hurts you most is not the love you lost. It's the love you never got to give, because the other person was still trying to find the courage to receive it.